Happy Monday. Hope you guys are good and hope you guys had a great weekend and are just ready for the new week and just to conquer in this new week. Anyway, guys, I'm just going to speak about the father wound versus your relationship with God. And I have been reading about this, but I did not understand the depth, obviously, until I had to go through things. Okay? Mina, I can only experience things after I've gone through them, no matter how stubborn it is. But after going through them, that's when I realized, oh, okay, this is okay. Okay. So I'm going to speak to you about that. The reason for actually speaking about it is because I'm going to give this book to a friend. I'm going to give to her to read. I think this book is gonna do its rounds when in my friendship circle, because this was a gift from a friend of mine who went to Uganda, and she just wrote me a beautiful voice note just to say, you know what, I feel like you're someone that deserves this book and you need to read this book, and I'm gonna bring it for you because she went to the church, the church, yeah, Pastor James, and I think you guys know him. Like, if you guys are like me, where I saw this thumbnail where they were speaking about someone who was married to a 60-year-old witch and all of those things, yes, that's the guy. So she went to the church and she got me this book by him, and woo! If you guys don't already know, I'm a PK, right? And with that comes abandonment issues because of obviously your parents putting their all into the ministry and putting their all into other families and not really catering to what they need to cater for. And when I mean by that, I don't mean provision, because sometimes it's emotional needs, sometimes it's those little things that you need as a child, and you get shortchanged because they need to be available for other families as well, and all of that. So with being a PK comes abandonment issues, and I'm not saying it's for everyone, because there are certain people that just had it on lock where they were like, family is my first ministry and my children this and that and that. But some people, a lot of people, especially in the previous generation, did not get that right. That's why a lot of PKs are just wayward. Okay, they are just out here in these streets because I think of that imbalance. But yeah, comes abandonment issues, comes lack of boundaries, comes people pleasing. It's a lot. So now with all these issues now, I'm growing up and I'm trying to understand and I'm learning. And now it became that I found myself being resentful. Resentful why? How I did relationships, how I do relationships, because of being clingy, because of lacking boundaries, because of obviously abandonment issues will make you want to now allow people to cross certain boundaries and all of those things. And that now it just birthed this resentment towards my father. And my mom is late, and my father is the one that actually took care of us from when I was 15 after my mom passed on. So up until now, like, he's just that person that is just there for his children. Like, he's never ever left us. However, there are emotional needs that as a person that you have and you lack, and so forth. So there's now me having to learn certain things and how I relationship and how I've failed in certain relationships because of the traumas that I've experienced in my life now, brought me to a place where I found myself being so resentful towards my dad. And I, to a point where even when someone gives you sound advice, like, at the back of your head, it's not something that I'm not someone that is rude. I believe I'm not rude, and I'm not someone that talks back like to elders. So those are the things that maybe I've learned even as a child, because obviously when you're a PK, and maybe just as a black child, you are taught to just be polite. You're taught to withhold certain emotions, or if you feel like speaking up, don't speak up, and all of those things. So those are the things that I grew up around that, and I think it helped me because I'm a very respectful child. Okay, a very respectful adult. So I appreciate that. However, with that also comes not having to speak up, and so that resentment, and found myself having to just be snide, when he speaks about something and he gives me good counsel, and in that moment it would not be good counsel because I'm rebellious, and I'm all of those things, then I'm just like rejecting each and every form of advice, because I'm like, "Ugh," in my head, you are not the one to speak. Or maybe when he would reprimand me of something, and I'm like, in my head, bro, you did not teach me this, so you cannot tell me that I'm careless with this and that and that. So there was that little bit of, inside. Obviously, I would never say it out loud. So that is the thing now that I've realized. With I became resentful, and I love my dad so much. If anyone knows me, knows how much I adore that man. My dad treats me like a princess. I think sometimes I experience issues in my relationship because I look for my dad, and that's not how it should be. That's literally not how it should be. And I thought that's how it is, but as I grow up, I realized no, that's not how it should be. But that's a story for another day. So I adore my dad. I love my dad, and I know my dad loves me. My father loves me, okay? I'm just his princess that just continues to disappoint him at times, many times, if I could put it that way. But I love him. However, that does not mean there are things that I felt like I lacked, especially emotionally, losing a mom at a very young age, and just needing some stuff from him. And then there are certain decisions that he took, that I felt like were like a little bit selfish. But he's a man, he had needs, and he had certain ideas that were going to work in his head, but they didn't. So those are the things that now were like boiling inside of me. I'm like, oh, you please, you are not the one to tell me about this, because look at this person, who this person has done in your life, this, all of those things. And that resentment just then last year I was fasting in November. Did I not receive a voice while I was praying? Like, I'm not going to say it's a voice, but I know it was not me. I'm just praying, and I just keep receiving, forgive him, forgive him, forgive him. I'm like, forgive who? And then forgive your father. So, mind you, in October, so the first thing was in November. In October, I had for the very first time a fallout with my dad. And a fallout, I don't mean we were physical. For me, a fallout is having to speak back, is having to raise my voice at my father. And the reason for the fallout was an accusation that was false. So I think it's one of those things where he was like, I know this is what you do, and this, I'm going to conclude that this is what happened, and that was not the case. So for me, number one, I was ticked off because because I have this father wound, because I have this thing that I love my father. I've done so many wrong things in my life, and I need to prove right. I love my father. I need to be seen as right in his eyes, and all of that. Those are father wounds, right? Having to please him, and that also shifted how I saw God, because that is exactly what I want to speak about right now. But I'm going to speak about this situation. So number one, that was that, where I'm like, I'm really trying, and you are now accusing me of something that I did not do, and that is not fair, right? So I felt justified. Number two, I was just tired, because the whole year I felt like I was just being accused, and falsely so. I'm saying falsely because, number one, at work there was a situation, and someone was just falsely portraying me as something, and it was very evident that that was not the case. It's just this person having an issue with me. Then I had a situation where I was falsely accused of doing something, and I had to actually ask for because obviously the apology is very silent, and I had to ask for it in writing, because it was an institution and a particular people that accused me of something. So I needed that in writing, just for my future also. And there was a false accusation. Upon realization, they were like, "Ooh, we apologize," but the apology was very, very, and the apology had very few people involved, as opposed to the accusation that I had a lot of people. So I was like, no, same energy, please. So that happened, and I was like, Aibo, now this, and I'm being falsely accused of this. Is there something wrong? What's going on? So I felt like I was just fighting. I was fighting so much. And I was just being the bigger person in all situations where I'm like, I'm not going to ask these people. I'm just going to pray about it. I'm going to do this and that and that and that about it. Now this comes with the one person that I don't want to, for him to see me as wrong in his eyes, now accuses me falsely so. And it broke me. Sorry, my stomach. It broke me. And I just went in. I went in. And thirdly, because I just had a lot of things that were boiling inside of me, that the whole of resentment, the things that I've just been observing, and I was just like, oh, I really, really wish, So I think those are the things that I was just like, yo. And then I just burst, and I was just crying, and I just let everything out to my dad and everything. So that was what happened in October. And then now in November, here I am now, hearing this voice that says, forgive your father. I'm like, no, I feel very justified, God, because of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, gave him reasons and everything. And after that, obviously, because of pride, I ignored it, right? And also another thing was because my dad and I were on speaking terms. I think that's another thing, because after the whole situation, though, I think a couple of days we were not on speaking terms until there's something that just got us speaking, because we just love to speak. We just love to have communication and laughter and all of those things together. So, for me, I was like, okay, we're cool. So I did not see a reason for me, because maybe I was like, maybe he realizes that, what, maybe she needed this. That's why I'm not gonna be hard on her, in my head, right? Now God is asking me during fasting. Pride was like never. Pride and just being accustomed to the fact that my dad will be okay. Ne? So that's what happened. Fine, in true God style, he just let me go. He just let me be. But what a weird experience I had in that time, where I was just like, no, I feel justified. I feel this, I feel that. I experienced God's love and forgiveness. I experienced, when you feel like that, usually you would have like a little bit of guilt, a little bit of condemnation, and even your fasting time would just be disturbed, because you're like, ish, I don't even know now if I'm supposed to. But for some reason, even after the fasting, some things happened in my life that were like favorable conditions to me. And I felt love. I felt like, okay, God is with me, even through me having to say, nah, having to reject his advice or his counsel, or having to reject the Holy Spirit's counsel. He's just showing me love, and I'm feeling so much love from him in terms of forgiveness. Like, I did not feel an inch of guilt or condemnation. Instead, there was that thing that was like, I love you regardless of what you do. Like, there's nothing that's going to separate my love from you. Guys, that freed me to a point where I now speaking about now the whole thing of the outlook of your father, how you see your father, or how you relate to your father, literally boils down to how some people relate to God. So sometimes we become rebellious because of the relationship that we have with our fathers, or lack thereof. We have disbelief in how God can show up in our lives because of the relationships with our father. Whether it is your father not showing up, being absent, there's something in you that will always feel like, I need to compensate, because I don't think God will just come through for me in that area. And also with me, it was not an absent father, but it was abandonment issues. So that stemmed now to me having to, and also the guilt of the way I was living my life, now having to be like, I need to please my dad. I need for him to see me in this light. And that boiled down to how now I praised God, I worshipped God, that's how I saw God. I had to put on a performance. I had, you guys, if something happened, if I fell, for example, if maybe I had to have a drink, like I told you guys that I was just sober from 2020, if I had to feel like I want a drink, I would go into this space of regret. I did not drink, ne? But the fact that I would think, yo, what is my father going to think? Because of the outlook I have of my earthly father. Because of how I see, my dad is not perfect. And there are things that as parents, you will be more favorable to the child that does good things, right? So there are things and circumstances that I would see waver because of how we behave towards my father. And there's a certain favor and love that he shows towards us when we're behaving right, or when we have jobs, or we know da. But when we lack in certain ways, there's some sort of, like, I just don't feel you right now. So because of growing up like that, that's how I felt how, like, I felt like God sees me in that way as well. And it affected how I relationshiped with God, especially when I started to take my journey seriously with God. And that moment let me know it is okay. It is okay for your heart to feel like this, number one. It is okay for your emotions. Like, you're not a robot. It's okay for you to feel like that. And I love you, and there's nothing that can separate me from your love. And that's how I felt God's love, guys. Where I was like, yo, I've been doing this God thing wrong. Where I felt like I need to perform. I felt like I needed to be right in His sight. And so many times I've been failing because I've not been actually maximizing His love and grace. I've always had to one up Him in terms of, I understand your grace, but Mina, I'm not going to do this. I understand your grace, but Mina, I'm going to try by all means to look right in your sight. I'm going to make sure, because I'm someone that's kind of hard on myself. I hold myself accountable so many times with so many things. So that is another area where I'm just like, I messed up, let me just quickly rectify. And I feel like, let me go before God before He can do something. And another thing also, because of how far He's taken me, where I'm like, yo, there's no way I don't want to look wrong in His sight. I don't, because I know how, my God has taken me out of certain situations where I can see now I'm with la. So it boils down to that, to the fatherly relationship and the importance of the father figures in our lives and how they treat us. But I just wanted to maybe share with someone that's also struggling with that has freed me to understand that my earthly father is just that. He's an earthly father. He's been gifted me to take care of until obviously a certain age, like right now where I'm grown. But at the same time, he's someone that he has his own traumas. He's someone that he has his own mistakes and the things that he does not understand generationally and all of those things. And I felt so much love for my father, guys. I cried and I felt so much love for him. I repented from actually blaming him, because I'm like, I have put on so much on him, and I should be looking to my Father, which is God. And that love that He gave me assured me, where He was like, no, I need for you to look to me, because everyone else is imperfect. You are never going to get the fullness of what you want. You see, right now, you love your father because he provided for you. He treats you like a princess. He's done this. He's never this. He's never that. But there was also an emotional need. He will never fulfill all of those things. There's somewhere where he's going to lack. So that love that God gave me was like, trust me. Look unto me. When I say my grace is sufficient, that is what I mean. Which I know that you feel this way, and there's no need for you to take it out on another human being. And I felt so much love for my father. And secondly, after the whole me I am fun, this year, beginning of the year, the very same week, actually a week or two before I received this book, it was speaking about how some of us tend to there are so many things that has to do with spirituality, right? And there are certain laws and principles, and a lot of us Christians feel like you don't have to honor your mother and father anymore, because when are you a part of Christ, or when are you feel like no, everything can be fasted and prayed away, and you don't have to forgive, you don't have to be a part of your family, you don't have to there's something that tells us that when we are Christians, nothing else matters. Like, we don't have to apologize, we don't have to honor, we don't have to respect authority and all of those things. Like, there's this thing that people do, and they're talking about that at church. Also, honoring your mother and father sometimes can cause delays, because that is God's law, and he does not back away from his law. When he speaks about his law, it is what it is. When he says that it may be well with you, there are things that are not well with you, because when you are choosing to disobey, you are choosing to that was strike two, right? I was like, okay, God is speaking to me right now. Like, there's no way, because number one, this was in November. God spoke to me, and I decided to be like, nah. Now this is number two. God is speaking to me, and I decided to be like, ish, Lord, ish, please, man. Now it's pride. Now it's pride. That's like, when you are justified, girl. Remember, And then the third one, freedom from bondage is in my father's house, and there's a chapter that speaks about disobedience to a father figure, and whether it's spiritual father figure, or authority, where it speaks about disobedience and how some people just lose out on certain things just because of that disobedience. When you think because you are going to church, you are fasting, when you don't drink, you don't smoke, you don't have sex, you don't speak ill of others, you don't what, and you find that a lot of Christians are on the straight and narrow, but their lives are just not producing fruits. Like, they are not happy, they are not successful, they are not living the fullness of what we're supposed to live as children of God, because of those little things, because of laziness, because of certain curses and whatever. And I was like, Lord, I hear you. Did I not go to my father, guys? And funny enough, in this book it says you go to your father even if you feel like you've done nothing wrong, or even if in your heart you've never said anything, but in your here you've harbored resentment and unforgiveness and whatever, and you feel like your father was supposed to do this and what, go to your father. God doesn't change his ways. There's something about that covering of a father that God respects. Go to your father, ask for forgiveness, and if possible, ask for him to release a blessing. Ask for your father to pray over you. I was like, okay. I started praying, obviously, first before I went to my father. I went to my father. I just went to him and I said, I'm here to apologize. I am here to say sorry of all the times I've disobeyed you. And I spoke even of the time that I spoke. I did not speak well. I felt justified and all of those things. And my dad was like, that's good. That's good. Like, he literally said that. He was like, that is good. And I forgive you. Before I even asked him, can I hold hands with you? Can we pray? No, he was like, come here, guys. And he prayed. And the prayer he prayed, he said, Lord, something about confession. And then he also said, I release a blessing upon her. And I was like, this is exactly what the book said. And I didn't even have to go to my dad and ask for that. He immediately did that. And from the love that God gave me, I freed myself from wanting to look right in my father's side. For some reason, there was that thing. And I think there was a confusion. I'm like, am I being rebellious? Or am I just like, I don't give a, Or is it freedom? It's really freedom. And I realize now that it's actually freedom, because I do not see him as anything else outside of being my father, who God has gifted me to love. And I see him as an authoritative figure, a head, a covering. I see him as this wonderful, beautiful complex of a human being and nothing else. I don't blame him for anything. Even when there's a little bit of a temper or any, I'm like, he's human. This has nothing to do with me. He's not shouting me. He's not shouting because of me. Or he's not, even anxiety. I used to have this, like I used to, when I feel like maybe something I didn't do right, or there's something I released. I promise you, there was a day where I remember he was saying something and I was asleep, né? And then I heard his voice being loud. Usually I'll just be like, oh my gosh, what angered him, what. There was so much peace in my heart. There was so much peace, and I realized that no, it's because I now understand God is my father. And it's not because I'm being rebellious, so I'm like, nah. If there was rebellion, there was still going to be anxiety. This is peace. And the way I see him now, and the way I see God now, I can go to God and be like, Lord, I thank you for my personality. Let my personality shine. I don't want to be anything else outside of what you've created me to be. And if I'm wrong, I know you love me so much that you're going to put me straight into the straight and narrow. So now I'm not even afraid of being who I am. Guys, there was a point where I felt like maybe I don't need to do this. I don't need to behave this way. And I had a confusion. And it was right for me to be in that space because I did not understand whether it was like from that time when I was just rowdy and whatever, or it is really my personality. And now things are just coming to place. And maybe there's a turn that this channel can go into, or maybe like when you see me, you'd be like, you never used to do that, but now you do it. Or it's just, I don't know. I'm just saying that there's this freedom now that I've found. And freedom looks good on me, if I can say so myself. I love this version of me. And I know I'll keep growing. And I'm just so carefree. And I know maybe it might not look like that outside, but the way I feel, the way I think, because I used to overthink everything. But now I'm like, no, I'm just going to put it out. But now I'm like, no, I'm just going to say it. But now I'm like, that is the voice of God. I used to even doubt the voice of God. But now I've received so much freedom, and I pray that now as I'm speaking about this, maybe there's someone that is maybe thinking about this father wound and how they see God and how they behave towards God, where like it's like, Lord, maybe that's why I've been so hard on myself. It's because of this and that. Maybe that's why I doubt when I pray, because I've just doubted my father. My father has always promised that he's going to be there for me, and he's left me. And maybe that's how I see you. That's why if things don't come to pass, I quickly leave you and I go and look for other options. I quickly disregard your promise and your word towards my life, where I'm like, see, I knew it. And then I go to maybe the patterns that you've gotten me out of, because I'm always 1 foot in and 1 foot out, because I doubt your love, because of the father wound. So I can't wait to free anyone that I'm just going to pass this to. Obviously my friend group, because I don't want it lost. Please. And I just can't wait for freedom in that area. And please look into that as well as just a person. Look into your father wound. So those are the things that you need to see and be like, yo, Lord, my outlook on who you are. And the father, the authoritative figure. Even maybe that's why I rebel against pastors, or I rebel against anyone that tells me what to do, that is an authoritative figure, because they remind me of my father. So anyone that reminds me of a father figure, I immediately reject. Lord, I apologize. Lord, help me to receive your love and not the outlook of how I see other people and the men and the father figures of our lives, whether it's presidents, whether it is my boss, whether it is my father, whether it is my pastor, whether it is leadership. And anything that says authority, and help me. And I just wanted to share this. Freedom from bondages. And there's so much that have to do with paternal and father, and that is just like, guys, it holds us hostage. And we just need to learn as Christians that there are things that you can't just mask away by just fasting and praying. But the fasting and the praying is for the Holy Spirit to reveal. The fasting and the praying is for insight, because you can pray and fast and God gives you a word that says do this. And maybe that could be the result of what you were fasting about. But if when you want to rebel against the instruction, like me, rebelling against the instruction, but I ended up actually having to fix it. But if I had continued and be like, nah, I'm going to push, I'm going to pray for this, I'm going to pray for this, but that one instruction that God wanted me to actually fix, I'm just like, no. So those are the things we need to understand as Christians, and yeah, and just people in life, because this is a spiritual walk. Whether you want to believe it or not, it's more spiritual than it is physical. But anyway, have you guys a wonderful week, and we'll talk. We will talk. When I have something to say, I will share.